Hello and welcome. This is Dante Harmon with Dante's Harmony, and you've tuned in to another episode of Dante's Harmony. What do John Coltrane, the Campbell Brothers, and Love Supreme have in common? You're about to find out next on Dante's Harmony. Thank you and welcome to Dante's Harmony. My name is Dante Harmon, and I am so excited today. I have one of the most premier Sacred Steel legends, bands. Man, these guys, I've known them probably since before I was born. They've known me before I was probably born, but I've known them for a very, very long time and grew up admiring the music, their father, their mother, their sister, and the group, the Campbell Brothers. Oh my goodness, what can I say? Legends of the Sacred Steel genre of music that we've grown to love. Today we're going to just be talking to some legends that are just phenomenal musicians. And we're going to dive into conversation dealing with their latest album, A Love Supreme. The Campbell Brothers presents John Coltrane's interpretation of A Love Supreme. I'm excited to dive into conversation about it. I know you are too, but before we do, check out this video. What can I say? Ladies and gentlemen, Phil Campbell, Chuck Campbell, the Campbell Brothers. How are you guys doing?
It's great, Dante.
Man, absolutely. That was the least I can do. That's the least I can do. How you doing, Phil?
I'm doing good, man. What about you?
I'm doing well. I
Hey,
am.
thanks for having us, man. And
Absolutely.
again, it's great talking to you. As always, I'm sorry I missed that your last podcast with the goats, man.
Oh, man.
But that was fantastic. So hey, man, just
you.
a shout out to you for the fantastic work you're doing.
Thank you, man. That was. I didn't think I could pull that off, and everybody that was there was supposed to be there, and it was an honor. To have all those living legends. And it was funny because after that particular podcast, gosh, Ted Beard called me, Ronnie called me, and they were all like, okay, can I get his number so I can give it to this guy and he's gonna call this person. It was just like a fellowship, man. A lot of these guys knew each other but didn't know each other, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was, I felt like it was communion at some point. They were excited to see each other, but didn't know that they were actually going to be meeting each other for the first time and admiring each other from off. The conversation after the podcast was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Chuck, you were there. You witnessed this firsthand, man. It was, and you're probably like the youngest. Of course, I was the youngest on the feed, but as far as that generation is concerned, you were the youngest of that generation.
Yes, and it was just an amazing moment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
a
It
lot
was
of guys we have heard of, but had never really met personally
right.
or had a chance to talk to them other than just waving to them at church.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and to be able to touch bases with them the way that we did it was unbelievable. I'll never forget it, and there's definitely going to be some follow up to that. So hopefully, Phil, next time you get a chance to dive in that one.
Well, I heard your little remark. You said that everybody that's supposed to be there was there. I heard that. You thought that guy by me. That was one of those. That's one of those preacher things that they slide in there on you.
Right, right.
But that's okay.
By and by, after a while,
We were just talking about your dad a little while ago, and sure enough, if that wasn't one of his moves, I don't know
that
what
that
That's it.
listen, the apple does not far from the tree.
amen.
So, and speaking of such, man, it's so funny the legacy that he left behind. Your brother, Darick, has left behind. Two great musicians. Father, big brother, that I consider as one of the Darick is probably considered like one of the most favorite steel players amongst a lot of youth, my generation, the ones that are even under me. But man, what a legacy he left behind. And when I was listening to A Love Supreme, to hear him on the track, it just surprised me. Like that's Darick. you know that
Yeah.
was a surprise for me to hear him on the recording, man. So yeah.
Well, it really speaks to something that Chuck has always advocated, which
Hmm.
is the important thing about doing recordings really is that you're capturing, moments in time and history um, that you may not have another chance to go back and relive. And so we're just grateful that we actually did this recording. We've recorded it in different locations, but that one seemed to be the most definitive as far as capturing what we set out to do. This the album that we're releasing, and again, Darick was very much an integral part of that whole composition, the arrangements, all of that. And so, yeah, it's we still haven't you know gotten over the loss, but we're trying to figure out a way to continue forward because again, we believe that's what he would want us to do.
And that would make all of us, because it's I have my moments where it's like, man, if Darick was here, or if Darick, when I'm listening to something or I find something, if Darick was here, he would send me this and I would send this to him. But just the moments of just playing together. But man, when I found out about the release in I think it was October the 1st of this year, when you guys released A Love Supreme, the album. And for those of you all that have not purchased the album, please, available on all digital outlets, go get it. The Campbell Brothers presents John Coltrane's A Love Supreme. Their interpretation of this piece of artwork, and it is just that. Their interpretation of a classic album. And yeah, when I sat down, I sat down in the studio and put it on and listened to all of the tracks, and I just couldn't believe it. It was profound. It was very jazzy, but it was very churchy. It was sacred steel meets the jazz world, but in your interpretation of what that was, at least to me, I love it. I love it, and to hear Darick on it really really did my heart well, because I was like, wow. So we actually do have another album with Darick on it. So Chuck, you're contributing to the album. I know there were a lot of arrangements, that there were a lot of different ideas being thrown around. What was the approach to this album to make all the other ones different?
Well, at first, when we were brought the project, it was intimidating
Mm,
because we had heard a lot of stories about John Coltrane that even sax players don't, jazz musicians don't try to tackle that.
Wow.
And for that reason, there's only been like one or two people that have done all four movements.
Okay.
And so when we were told we was going to do all four movements, it was really lost as to which way to go. And but fortunately, we got a lot of our booking agent and the guy that wanted us to do this, that thought we would interpret it well and put a
Right.
different slant on it from a spiritual standpoint.
Right.
Um, Bill Brigham said that they didn't want us because we gave them a few takes where we were trying to go note for note. They said, don't even try it. They said,
Wow.
luckily with our training from church, we understand, uh,
The don'ts.
criti- uh,
The criticisms.
yeah, or, uh, so it didn't hurt us, but it left us lost as to which way we should go. And they said, the main thing is for you to do is do your own interpretation, and to make sure that you bring that church spirit into it. And
Wow.
from that, we was reading and doing research on John.
Mm-hmm. I think I lost Chuck just for a second.
Yeah,
Yeah. So Phil.
I just lost you, Dante. Yeah, I
Lost my
lost your
audio.
audio.
Can you hear me
Okay, there
now?
you're back.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So Chuck was just saying. Here we go. I can just bring him back in here.
Can you hear me? I just disconnected.
That's all right. Yeah, we got you. We got you.
Okay, did you lose me?
Yeah, we did.
Oh wow, I can't believe that. Well, so we finally got to a point where we were able to get satisfaction amongst ourselves with how we were going spiritually, and then from there on out, it was a thing of getting into the spirit to make sure we were able to do that work some justice.
Right. So I have
Eh,
to ask the question. So since we're here and we're talking about it, what was the thought? What was the thought behind having a sacred steel band, sacred steel legends from the church, take on John Coltrane's jazz album, "A Love Supreme," which is quite indeed a classic? What was the thought that went into the thought behind that?
So again, as Chuck mentioned, Bill Bragan is a presenter out of New York City
Mm-hmm.
who actually was conducting jazz tributes through programming that he had been doing
Okay.
in the early since 2000s or so. And he heard us and he wanted us to do participate in what he called these wall to wall series. And what that is he brings in, I don't know, 40 to 50 jazz artists.
Okay.
And that would be not only individual artists, but their entire groups in
Okay.
to do and perform the work of a great artist. And in this case, he invited us to perform Miles Davis, participate in the Miles Davis wall to wall.
Wow.
This thing starts at like 11 a.m. and goes to like 10 p.m. that night. So it's
Wow.
wall to wall, all Miles Davis tunes that musicians are doing interpretations of.
Okay.
He assigns us um, "Someday My Prince Will Come," all blues, and "Summertime"
Okay.
um, from Miles Davis. We did that and we participated, and actually we got a standing ovation
Wow.
at the wall to walls, and our interpretation of Miles's music was featured on Branford Marcellus's um, radio show that he was doing at the time, where he played highlights of the Wall to Wall series, and we made the cut for that. So
Wow.
that's where it started. So from that performance, then Bill Bergen started saying, "Wow, I wondered what you all would do with a Love Supreme." So now this is circa 2003, 2002, 2003.
Wow.
And fast forward, he is now the curator and presenter at the Lincoln Center. And so now he says, you know what? I now have the funding
Hmm.
to actually go and make this happen. And so, which was kind of strange to us because, you know, Wynton Marsalis is on the board of Lincoln Center outdoors, right?
Right.
So you're thinking if he wanted to have someone do, they could literally get anyone they wanted to
Right.
do um, a commemorative interpretation for the 50th anniversary of John Coltrane's Love Supreme, which in 2014 was the 50th anniversary. But he calls us and says, hey, you remember that idea? Here it is. Duke University then comes on and they like the idea so much that they co sponsor and co commission with Lincoln Center Outdoors for us to go do it. And that was the genesis of us getting involved in the project.
Wow.
But as Chuck said, the whole caveat was you had to do all four movements. And that's where the real challenge came in.
So for people
But
who don't, so for people, I'm sorry to cut in, Phil.
no, that's good, good.
For people who don't understand the four movements, you're talking about acknowledgement. You're talking
Hmm.
about let's see, resolution,
Yes.
pursuance, and psalm.
Yep. Pursuance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these were all the different movements in this particular interpretation that you guys delved into on Love Supreme on your album, and it's let me just tell you, listening to the original 1964 version and listening to what you all did, it's no wonder that you didn't get a standing ovation, and I hope it lasted for about 20 minutes.
In some cases, it did.
Yeah.
I think people really appreciated when we finished what it took to bring that forward.
Hmm.
And it was gratifying. I think one of the most gratifying things that occurred is that people actually were bringing their original vinyl albums of John Coltrane's "A Love Supreme" for us to sign at shows.
Wow.
And again, the
Wow.
fact that that community would actually embrace what we did to the extent that they felt like we were worthy to be a part of that legacy
Hmm.
and have us sign that album. I mean, that really was
That's a
a
big
huge
deal.
confirmation and affirmation of the work that we had done.
Wow. That speaks within itself. So I have to ask, even with doing that, there was, as I was doing my research, I saw the things that actually motivated Coltrane to do this recording, and how this movement of the recording set with his personal life. How can you relate what he went through to what you guys did as it relates to actually doing that? I mean, are there any comparisons? Is there some, what John Coltrane went through is what you guys went through?
Well, what it is it's a spiritual awakening. So the first the first movement is acknowledgement, which is something you have to do before you even decide to get saved.
Wow.
And then it says resolution. You resolve within yourself that, you know what, I know I need to be saved, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it.
Right.
I'm gonna go. So you make a resolution that I'm gonna go ahead on and try to do it. And of course, when you start, then you got to pursue it. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
And basically,
sometimes,
that meant Terry service, right?
yeah,
Talk about it.
that meant fasting and
And that's where
praying
we
and
went,
trying
right?
to beat something, which we understand that Coltrane had to beat, demons of, dependency on different, from substances
Substance
that,
abuse and yeah.
and things of that nature. And, no matter what you got to overcome to get saved, you got to pursue it. And then once you do that, once you get, claimed,
Crossover.
or
Right.
you know that within your soul, because they always ask you, you the one have to know.
Right.
And at that point, once you know it, that's song.
That's it.
And at that point, you're that's the happiest you ever would be, and that's when you recognize there is a such thing as a love supreme.
Yeah.
And that was the so that's where we related what he went through with this work. And by the way, all the musicians on that album, his father was his grandfather, we was told, was a Pentecostal minister. The piano player from Detroit was
Um,
from the church.
McCoy Tyner.
Yes,
Okay.
at first. And so they had maybe a similar background,
Wow.
and you'd be shocked at the number of people out there that are really professionals that come. Well, you're not shocked, but they come from a background similar to us, and it's really a fun time when you get into those conversations and you find out we aren't as bad as we thought we were, as
Hmm.
or as we're not as unique as we thought we were.
Yeah. Well, let's just put it out there. We get criticized first of all for going out and playing the devil's music, and and it's the cliches, the things that are said sometimes really don't make sense in the scheme of things. We're called to be light to darkness. We're called to go out in those places that don't have light. That I think that's just it. We're to be the reflection where it needs to be. It's hard to light up a place that's already lit. you know.
Well, yeah, and I think again, this takes us all the way back even to something that we had to resolve and come to some conclusion, even as the Campbell brothers, right?
Yeah.
When we were first going out and performing outside the church,
Hmm.
and so we said, all right, we're going to try and do this the easy way. We can do a theater, we can do a concert hall. We're
Hmm.
not going to do bars.
Mm.
All right, because now we've gone too far. We're going into the devil's den, so on and so on. We get a call from a gentleman in Boston who says, "Hey, I want you to come and play my bar." And we said, "No, we don't do bars. We're not going to do that because we're religious." And the owner of the bar said, "Listen, if anyone needs to hear your music, it is these people."
Hello.
And he said, I don't want you to change anything. I don't want you to do a crossover set or anything like that. I want you to do that exact same church-based music that you do, and I want you to bring it to this bar because these are the people that actually need it.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's what
Wow.
turned us around and said, you know what? We're going.
Yeah.
And even Katie Jackson joined us. Right?
Wow.
For that because and again, we all had this, we had all been indoctrinated with this belief that that's not what we're supposed to do. But
Right.
it gets back to, hey, you're the light of the world. Go forth, right?
Right.
Go
Right.
forth and preach to all nations. And we're not preaching in the traditional sense, but yet we're bringing that message of hope, redemption, love, all those things that's embodied in our music. And invariably, the sad thing is a lot of people say I go to Campbell Brothers concerts because I can get church without the politics and the
Wow.
aggravation, and that's what people come to our concerts for.
Wow. And it's truth. That's and you're getting the truth from the people that are experiencing it. I've been there as a musician, and I've seen it. One guy told me drunk in the bar that if church is if heaven is anything like what I'm experiencing in this, I'll come to church every week. and he was basically talking about coming to where we were having this this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday thing. I was doing a residency at a place called Maddie's, which is a barbecue joint, and we deemed it barbecue church. And literally we
Hmm.
we had
And you put it
barbecue
on. You put
church.
it on fire, didn't
I
you?
put
Put
it
it
on
on you.
fire.
Now that's
They,
a fire,
now
right
that's a fire right there.
there.
Roll them on over. Roll them on. But and the reality was to hear it from that guy in that
Oh,
moment
yeah.
was humbling. It was a wake up call, and if he could say that and pull me to the side, I mean, he was very intentional. He said what he said, and he meant what he said, and he came back week after week because he wanted some more. And it's funny. The same way I met Colonel Bruce Hampton.
Hmm.
He came to that spot where I was doing the red. I didn't know who he was to
Right.
later on play with him, up until the point of his death. But again,
Yep.
it's we just never know, you
You
know.
don't know.
You don't
Yes.
know. So I'm glad you're saying that, because a lot of church people, a lot of religious people are going to listen to or look at the cover of your CD, or look at the cover and the title of your CD, and they're immediately, going to spark John Coltrane. Isn't he a jazz? And to understand or to get the meaning behind why and what the relevance was, I think is very important.
Well, and again, if you, you know how it's funny how church people have these sayings, right?
Right.
And yet they don't adhere to them.
Right.
So if you knew Coltrane's story,
Hmm.
right, which is like they like to say, if you knew my story,
Right.
if you knew John Coltrane's story and what this work meant in his life, then you would almost say, church musicians, this should be required learning, right?
Correct.
Because this man put forth a composition that is recognized 50 years later as a tribute, right,
Right.
to God, which isn't that what we call worship,
Hello.
right? Isn't that what, and
That's
it
exactly what it
stands
is.
as a monument to this day,
Yeah.
right, of what this man put forward. And it is actually, as great a musician as he is recognized for, this maybe is recognized as his most seminal and peak pinnacle of his work.
Wow. And
A tribute to God, who is the love supreme.
right. And thank you for that segment, because that's where I was actually going to go. How can we talk about love without talking about God? I mean, no matter who you are, we. I tell people this, and I say it, and when I say it, I remember being at a church, and they were doing a workshop about R&B music and love music, and I made a statement. I said, we're having the wrong debate. I said, if we read the Bible, I said the Song of Solomon is more explicit than an R&B song, if truth be told.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
that's number
Hmm.
one.
Right.
Number two is, if we're really true to what we're really trying to convey and say, it's hard. If you listen to a lot of these love songs, it's really reverent. It's hard to talk about love without talking about God. And the way they're talking about, even if it's relating to a lady or somebody that's a love interest, it's the way it is talked about is in such a God-like way. It's just difficult to play, to sing, to talk, or have any conversation about the word love, and you not include God in it. What is your take on that?
Well, ultimately, many artists, if you even listen to the lyrics of their songs, now I'm not talking about these guys that just out here that's peddling, just
Just
peddling,
saying any and everything.
rump
Right.
shaking and all that. I'm not
Right.
I'm not talking about that. But
Mm-mm.
but folks that are truly trying to explore the subject, whenever they try and take it to a higher plane or a higher level,
Hmm.
you always have to go up,
Yeah.
right? And eventually, if you keep going up, eventually you're going to get to God. You have there's no other place to go
Yeah.
when it's all said and done, because God is love, right?
Yeah.
That's
He
the
is.
scripture.
I think one
So,
one thing that is that we found out,
Hmm.
um, more, mostly all people in the church,
Hmm.
even the ones that are really conservative and the strictest, actually know a lot of R&B love songs, the hits. They know
Word for word.
them because they'll tell you if you're not playing it right.
It's the truth, Chuck.
and, and I think one thing that we've learned, and we learned it the hard way,
Hmm.
is don't get upset with the organization
Right.
for their stance. That's not individuals.
Right.
Most of the individuals are pretty, can be either way, long as it's not getting causing them any trouble.
Right.
And so what happens is if your organization goes against it, then you got a problem. But in the end, they they're really trying to protect the organization, not what they truly feel,
Right.
because they don't want it all out that everybody can play whatever. Because next thing you know, people be in church trying to play a Love Supreme,
Right.
and that kind of thing is hard to govern.
Right.
And so we have to always remember that the church is an organization that they have to govern, many many thoughts and many people, their ways, in order for the organization to prosper.
Right.
So
So in other
so
words, what Chuck is saying is, somebody gonna take it too far, and
Right.
so in order to prevent that, you have to err on the side of caution,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
But back to the point, back to his point, there are people who can discern,
Yeah.
and that's the saving grace.
It
And
is.
so in that regard, when you're able to again have real conversations with people, and that's what it always comes back to, right? When we
Hmm.
and reason together, that's when we can actually find a place where we can continue to work together and exist and continue forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And
and
I
by the way, maybe since you're a minister of music and you've been everywhere, done everything.
not
Is
like you,
there
Slept
any
with the
Chuck.
place?
president.
Is there any is there any is there any place in the Bible? I don't care what version you use, where God labels music, where He says it's R&B, or
No,
He says it's Christian, or He says it's rock.
that's all us. That's all us. And I think
Just a
that's
thought.
and it's and I'm glad you said that because that's where I win in the conversation. We don't even I don't think we even realize that those are just different styles of music. The country is a style. The R&B is a
Correct.
style. It's a style, and it's yeah. None of that was.
Well, I think where we really ran into it is
Hmm.
with Sacred Steel when we first started performing outside the church,
Hmm.
and people said, well, especially when we started traveling abroad, people
Right.
saying that's the greatest blues I have ever heard, because that's what they could relate it to.
Right.
So they're like, this is different, but it's the blues, but it's a whole new type of blues is
Hmm.
what they were saying, and because that's all they could relate it to, so that's what they used as their point of reference. When the reality is, it's just church music for us,
Right.
but that's what they heard because that was their frame of reference. And
Reference.
so the
Hmm.
point being, depending on what you've been exposed to,
Right.
that's what you're going to label and do that. And by the way, this is just a microcosm of what we see in society, right? It's
Right.
the same thing.
It
It's the
is.
same way that people label races. It's the same way people label different behavior. It's the
Yep.
same way people, whether it's culturally or stylistically or whatever that is, it still all falls in that category of labeling
Right.
and then ultimately defining people. And then where it gets dangerous is then once they use those definitions to then shape policy, law, and administer different things, that's when it becomes oppressive.
Right.
And that's where it gets dangerous. But ultimately, all this stuff still revolves around someone placed a label on something and then someone designated, well, because it has that label, that's evil. And because it has this label, it's good.
Right. And that's far left. And I totally agree. I think it's and again for for those that are joining with me on this podcast, I am talking to the Campbell brothers who have just released as of October of this year, Love Supreme, their tribute, the Campbell brothers interpretation and tribute to John Coltrane's A Love Supreme. And for those of you all that don't have it, you need to go get it. It's available on all digital outlets. Go download it. Go buy it, and listen to it. You won't be disappointed. I think it's good to give context to it. And I'm kind of glad what you're saying. What you're saying, even from a musician standpoint, a lot of guys from the church may listen to what you guys are doing, and decide, okay, well, man, they did a tribute to John Coltrane. Let me go do a tribute to just some other artist, just randomly. You guys are giving context to why. You're giving context as to the reason behind it, and there was an intent. There was an intent, and when you really study his story, there was some similar things that you all went through, that he went through. It was different. Like you said, Chuck, it was worse. Some of the things that he experienced is worse than where you are, or some things we've never experienced. But all in all, it served a purpose.
Yeah.
Yes.
It served a purpose, and I think that's what we've lost. Music with purpose. I don't remember the last gospel album I listened to and I was really taken.
Well, you're jaded.
Yeah.
No, it's
No.
just like we listen to steel guitarists in our church, and we're like, and somebody else comes in off the street or from another church and say, "Man, what's that?" And we like, that guy can't even play,
Mm,
But you're used to it, and I
yeah,
think another point I want to make is that um, the way we were raised,
yeah,
where we were taught not to play secular music
right,
or even listen to it, actually bode well with what we ended up doing because we come at it from such a we really defined our style and what we were before we started going into other works.
right,
And so everything we do, and I get this from everybody that listens to every Sacred Steel player,
hmm,
they can't believe the spirituality that comes out of what they're playing.
yeah,
Although a lot of people are around there jumping and moving, and people that come from the church sometimes say, "Oh, well, they just drunk or they just." Well, a lot of them end up going and trying to find a House of God church
yep,
to get some more of that.
they do,
And you definitely get people like the Colonel that actually pull you in and say, "Hey, you're gonna play with us on stage, and if we ever in your area, you in our area, you come by." And
yeah,
that's because we were raised and we ended up learning this style of music
yeah,
from a from our own culture,
yes,
and then taking it. So we we honed it at home and then took it abroad.
right,
Opposed to if guys start, mixing it from the start, that might end up with a different result.
yeah,
Yeah. And again, I think another place that where we were blessed and fortunate, people that another probably relatively unknown fact about us is that our father, Bishop Campbell, even though we weren't allowed to play secular music in our home,
right,
he still always pointed us to the great musicians of the day.
yes,
So he still wanted us to be as good as BB King. He still pointed us to Sam Cooke. He still pointed us at these different George Benson and all these different folks. And he still felt that he said, listen, I want you to be the best, but the house of God does not define that standard.
Wow.
I want you to compare yourself to the best in the world.
Mm.
And so ultimately what that means is at some point you got to go listen to what these people are doing
Right.
in order to make the comparison.
Right.
So of course he led you there, but he didn't say it because I
Right.
think back to Chuck's point, you can't say it being an official of the church, but
Right.
yet he pointed us in that direction to say you had to be this good. And again, one of our favorite stories, we would go to New York. Dad would take us to New York City
Mm-hmm.
down on 48th Street to see the latest equipment that was coming out, right?
Okay.
Because see, when I was coming along, you didn't have all this internet and all this kind of stuff. We
Sending
go
me the
look up.
link
You
and
actually literally had to go to New York City to see
right.
certain things.
Right.
And we went in and we were looking at that time, we were looking at the Steinberger bass and we
Wow.
were looking at Kent Smith bass and stuff like
Wow.
that. And so we went into the shop and man, it was this nondescript, I'm just gonna say it, white brother that was in there.
Okay.
And we said, hey man, he's in there, he's running the shop
Okay.
and he's got the Ken Smith basses and he's got all this different stuff. He said, hey man, can you show us something on this bass? Man, he picked up that Ken Smith. You talking about wearing it out?
He wore it out.
Man,
Oh my
listen,
goodness.
not just playing. He was popping,
He was
slapping,
popping, man, chiming,
killing the whole nine, harmonics,
harmonics.
everything.
Was
So
it Jack?
then,
Was
so
it
we said,
Jocko?
listen.
Hey,
So we saying, hey man, what you do? He said, I play on Broadway. I do Broadway shows and
Wow.
stuff. Oh really, man? What else do you do? Oh, I got a book here on slapping. Here it is. He actually had a
Wow.
book out in the store teaching
Wow.
and at
slap
the
bass
time
techniques.
we thought Phil was the end all, man.
Right.
Yeah, we thought
and
Phil
then
was the end all.
and then
We had
he
to sit down.
proceeded to play a portrait of Tracy Jocko.
Right.
And he said he had done that. He had to transcribe it as a part of his graduate assignment. So he taught
Wow.
me right on the spot portrait of Tracy,
Wow.
And
harmonics, the whole nine.
When Phil tells you that our father was had us look up to musicians outside the church.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we always rated what we thought were the best steel players or the best guitar players
Right.
or best musicians in the
In the
church.
church.
But what it spoke to more was education,
Got you.
which is something we found that when you playing out, you end up getting an education that because if it wasn't for this consignment,
Wow.
is no way we would have dissected and worked and found out what we're sharing with you today
Right.
about Coltrane. And the same thing happened with Miles Davis, because they said when he did All Blues, the story is that he was walking by a Pentecostal church,
Wow.
and that inspired him to do All Blues.
Wow. And
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 you would never know that.
you would never know that because of how it's classified and how things are put out.
Correct.
But the behind the scenes, the actual real story, the untold story, the
Hmm.
truth of the matter is that yeah, it was all godly. It was all God. It was all divine.
Yes.
Inspired. That says a lot.
And that's actually the unknown secret of many of these great artists.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get exposed to it in some of these documentaries and things like that, but
Yeah.
many musicians, especially if they've been in the business for any length of time and survived the road, the way they survived it is they had to have some degree of spirituality.
Right.
Now, the church might say, yeah, but that doesn't mean they were saved. That's fine, but guess what? They're living by something.
Correct.
They're working. They're using some standard of separation that says there are certain things I won't do and there are certain lines I won't cross.
Right.
That's how they're able to survive the road.
Wow. I'm glad you said that. I was going through your discography and just looking up some of the artists that you played for, Buddy Guy, the Allman Brothers, Bootsy Collins, Medeski, Martin and Wood, and on and on and on and on and on. One of the questions I wanted to ask is, what has it been, and what has your takeaways been for working with those greats. You know, you just mentioned Miles Davis. You talk about Coltrane, but what is it like to meet someone that you'd admired from far off, and then you're sharing the stage with? Like, what do you walk away with Buddy Guy? You know, this blues legend. How do you walk away from being on stage, on the same stage with him? And what are your takeaways from such greats?
Well, my takeaway is that all these guys have worked hard, and a lot of them have not been appreciated or paid as they thought they would,
Mm,
but they still persevered and kept going. And at some point, they get the accolades, or they don't get them all, but they get some accolades. But their whole thing to us is always, I can't believe how y'all make it talk.
wow.
And I can't believe how you guys play. And um, like uh, Phil has this unique style that they like. It's they haven't heard anybody play like that
Hmm.
because he didn't really copy some all the guitarists out there word for word.
Right.
And I guess the best story I got is meeting Ernie Isley
Okay.
on the Hendrix tour. He comes, he tells me and Darick that he wants to talk to Darick and myself.
Okay.
And I'm saying, okay, what did we do? Because he's kind of like he cracks a lot of jokes,
Okay.
but he's real deadpan about it, and
Okay.
he's similar to your father.
Okay. Okay.
You don't know if it's a joke or a reprimand
Right.
till
Right.
you go and just think about it for a while,
Like he just cut me.
or you see him the next time and he's acting normal
Okay.
when you thought he was reprimanding you. So I thought
Mm,
maybe Darick and I was joking on the bus too much,
mm,
and he took offense to that.
hmm.
So he pulled us in and he said, "Hey man, I gotta tell you guys something. So come on back here." Went in the back of the bus and he says, "Man, let me tell y'all, when y'all make that thing moan," he said, "Man, all I can think about is church and my brother singing something. And that's like Ron singing. When y'all do that,
Yeah.
he said, when y'all do that, man, y'all Robert, when y'all be doing that stuff, man, gent." He said, "Man, he said, man, let me tell y'all one thing. Don't y'all ever stop playing that like y'all play it. Don't
Wow.
don't you ever stop." And and so Darick and I say, "Hey, man, you joking with us or what?" He talking about, "No, man, I'm serious." And then his wife came to us and said, "Hey, Ernie comes back and listens to you all's set every night."
Wow.
And that's the kind of accolades you get from these musicians. And it's really BB King was another one that was which come to find out he liked playing steel, and George Benson.
Wow.
They loved the
Yeah.
steel.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think my story was we
Wow.
were in Chicago and we met Herbie Hancock on the elevator.
Okay.
And he's like, "Who are you? Hey, who y'all with?" We said, "Campbell Brothers." Campbell Brothers. Oh man, that's great. I said, "Oh, stop, man. I know. Okay, you just being nice." He said, "No, man. Y'all play that the church music, man." He's like,
Wow.
"Hey, keep it up, man.
So he
That's
knew.
nice, man." He knew I couldn't
Wow.
look. I'm like, stop it. So
Right.
we've
Right.
had those kinds of moments where
Yeah.
people who we felt would never know who we
Right.
were know who we are, which
Hmm.
is that I think that's the biggest shock of all, you
Wow.
know. And the way Chuck and Darick have played, invariably where they play,
Mm,
it's been that way, and same with the other steel players,
right.
Figure steel players, and I'm just proud of these guys. Chuck will tell you when I started. I remember when I was even learning Isley Brothers stuff back in the '70s when I was in high school, and I was learning Return to Forever and all the fusion stuff. And I told Chuck them back then, he'll tell you, I said, "Listen, the way y'all play those guitars, if the world heard y'all, they would not believe it."
Right.
I say because the tone and the way you all are phrasing, this is the stuff they actually go to school to try and learn. This
Right.
is what they imitate the greats and try and learn. I said, man, listen to me. And Chuck will tell you, but back then I told him. So we
Yeah.
had one person that said he told us back in '69. I told him in '79. And
Right.
you know, and sure enough, but I said if they ever heard Henry or Calvin or Ted, I said
They
or
lose it.
Chuck, I said their minds would be blown
They
because
lose
this
it.
is the tone they're actually trying to go get and achieve,
Yes.
and they had it already.
And it was natural. It was a thing to hear. I would get fascinated just listening to some of the things that we did with hymns. You know, I had to, of course, totally unlearn or relearn a
Yep,
lot of my approach to
yep,
hymns,
yeah.
playing other places because the sacred steel or the house of God way of playing a hymn was not the according to the hymn book or to other church
To the
standards to the
hymnologist.
hymnologist. And we had our own interpretation of even the hymns, and
Yes.
it was so unique to hear Henry do a hymn, to hear Calvin do a hymn, to hear Ted do a hymn, and even you, Chuck, to do a hymn, and then hearing Kenny and some of the other great guitarists come behind and accommodate and accompany them in just the style in which they played it. It was so unique. And that within itself is an interpretation of
Hmm.
within our church, just doing it, just playing a hymn. If somebody came from the outside just to hear us play a hymn, they're like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, hold on, this is not.
No, we've had keyboard players come to us and say, I heard what you did, and I was like, wait a minute, that's wrong. And he almost said that's wrong. Then he said, no, it's not wrong. It actually makes sense what you're doing, but I would have never thought
Thought to do that.
to voice it that way.
Yep.
Right. And I think, and again, it's actually, the great keyboard players or great musicians, they can get with that and learn from it. It's the guys that are limited. Those are the guys that turn their nose up and go, "Oh, you're playing that all wrong."
Right.
Musicians go, "Hey, wait a minute, man.
You
That's a
just
whole
open
different
me
take.
up.
Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. What you're doing there?" And so I can always tell when a guy says, "Hey, man, don't take me out of my comfort zone because I
Yeah.
can't swim," as opposed to someone's that is out there that say, "Hey, man, I'm on the lookout for new and fresh. Thank you."
Right. That it
Yeah,
was.
that's just like I told your. I remember I told Eddie
Uh huh.
and the musicians when he had me to do a seminar.
Yeah. In Florida.
I
Yeah.
said the main thing about playing with people, and especially on hymns,
Right.
is whatever the other musicians are doing. In
Hmm.
other words, if they can't do the complex chords or the augments and diminishes with you, don't do them
Right.
because you'll clash.
Right.
But I said, you can do a hymn in one key, all the hymns, just stay in one key.
Hmm.
And he said, "Nah, you can't do that." So I said, "I'll play it, and I'm gonna stay in the same key." So I had your mother sing, and they were singing the hymn, and I just stayed in one key, and everybody started laughing. And the reason why that's funny is because I went to a few churches where the musicians wouldn't change. They didn't know how to play the hymn. They played it at one. They didn't change one. They just stay on the one, man.
Right. Yeah.
They stayed on the one the whole
The
time,
whole
man.
time.
But it worked.
Yeah.
It works, and that's the thing we've learned because we went to church so much and played so much that we would experiment. You know, you playing the same song sometime Sunday after Sunday or Wednesday and Friday and Sunday,
Right.
and so you end up experimenting. But that's
And
that's
trying
the
out new
nice thing
things.
about hymns
Yeah. And
and
it
songs.
said it in songs. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Because you have those songs that you could stay on the one and just fly. You know.
yes,
It's funny we talk about that and Phil, when you were talking and something you said it, real musicians really take that and they say the ones that are not limited say, yeah, that's no, we can do something with that. We
Yeah.
can take what you just did and oh yeah, no, I like that. I was 2004, a friend of mine called me. Jasper Williams was looking for a piano player, and I
Yeah.
started playing for Jasper Williams. But I felt like I got saved all over again, man, because that interview process was something. He had me at the board, he had me at the table, and then when they brought me out to play, of course he's there, he's singing all of his old stuff. He comes out with this hymn, and I knew it, but I knew it House of God way. Okay. And it wasn't Amazing Grace, but it was another Baptist hymn that they have a funny loop. Like they
Oh
they
yeah.
they they go to the two instead of going to the four or something like that. And
Yeah.
yeah, and it was, but what I did fit. And the musician turned around and they looked at me like, nah, that it was wrong, but that was right. Like,
Oh yeah.
hold on, do that again. And
Exactly.
even Jasper looked at me and he said, I like you. And it was a moment for me. And what you just said just made me think about that moment, because our interpretation of how we play something, our approach to it, that's really what makes us so unique.
Yes.
Our style, our approach, even the way you guys approach. And I'm gonna play a couple of these tracks, just to talk about them a little bit. But the approach, the way I would be so fascinated certain years, as a high school student and just a drummer, before I even started with the steel, just listening to you all play. Now I was one of the ones that was interested in the hymns and the stuff that Phil was doing and you were doing, Chuck. When y'all were doing hymns, it was like textbook. Like, y'all didn't hear that. Phil was doing like going to the one chord, no, going to the four chord, a half step above the four chord, and sliding back, 2 frets, doing some minor inversions of the hymns that we were singing, and it fit. And I went home and studied that stuff. Like, whoa, okay, this is good. But it I think the thing that really makes us unique is just the fact of being able to try it and it work, and we not be scared to do it. And then, as
Yeah.
you said, when we go out, they hear us doing our normal stuff, and they're freaked out. Like, wait a minute, what is this?
Right.
Well, the other thing though, Dante, I'm not sure it's there. I think there are some guys operating on, hey, I'm just going to try it and
Yeah,
see what happens. But no, there's still a certain amount of you know um, what I would call consecration and
yeah,
anointing to this. As in, there are certain things I'm not going to do.
right.
So I'm gonna do it at home. I think it sounds fantastic at home, but that's called we call that the basement. Everything sounds good in the basement.
That's right.
Okay. But when you come to the church, that's the litmus test.
Hello.
Now, at the same time, it's still a church service.
Right,
So you're not just trying stuff just because at the same time, we're not here for my musicianship.
right,
We're here still to edify the service.
right,
So anything that's going to interfere with that, you're still not trying to do. But yet you gotta whip it out and see whether or not it's true
right.
and whether or not that's the litmus test. And we always say our test always, if it works in church,
It
it'll
work
work anywhere.
anywhere.
That's how we've always judged how great a tune actually is, right?
Yeah.
And but still in all, make no mistake that you still have to bring that. And I think that's where guys get caught.
Hmm.
They're taking licks and just dropping them in
Right.
without the context and without really thinking about, does this really fit? Does it really add anything to it? Versus, hey, I just ripped off a new lick that I just learned.
Right.
Completely different context, and that's the difference. I think a lot of times as far as how this works for people.
Yeah. I totally agree. Um, so we go from that. I want to play a snippet of Acknowledge, and give me just in your own way, who who came up with the different arrangements and so this is Acknowledge off of the Campbell Brothers' latest album, the Campbell Brothers Present, John Coltrane's "A Love Supreme." Again, the musicians on this album: Phil Campbell on rhythm guitar. You got Chuck Campbell and Darick, the late great Darick Campbell on. Chuck is on Pedalsteel. Darick is on Lapsteel, and then we have Carlton Campbell on drums and Levi.
Derek.
Darick Bennett.
Darick Bennett.
Darick Bennett on bass.
Hmm.
Phenomenal. So Acknowledgement.
Yes.
Who was really responsible, or did everybody kind of contribute to the interpretation and to the phrasing and to the
Back to what Chuck said, we started out with this note for note kind
mm-hmm,
of. So first of all, to go back, we had to learn a
the
love
music?
supreme.
Yeah,
Okay, so that in and of itself was quite a challenge. I mean,
yeah,
that took some time just to learn the music itself.
yeah.
Now we come back and now we come circle back around and say, okay, now how do we actually interpret this? Because
Okay.
we're not here to do a cover,
Right,
right?
right.
Um, and I think ultimately what we arrived at was call and response.
Okay,
So a
okay.
love supreme, how do we make that? So now we almost make it almost like a congregational song where Chuck is soloing,
Mm-hmm.
but yet we're doing a call and response of a love supreme.
Okay.
And that's what the rhythm actually is doing. And then I think from there, I think Carl decided to take it up tempo, um, as opposed to again the original tempo.
Right.
And then from there, Darick Bennett fell in with the bass,
Mm-hmm.
and
It just
you know
it
that
became what
formed
it
the
is.
bed. But again, what really makes the track still is still Chuck being able to channel Coltrane as the solo, and I mean that's the amazing part of that. And that's where I come along and say, I don't think I'm going out too far on a limb to say I'm not sure if there's any other sacred steel player that could do what Chuck did as far as that interpretation of John Coltrane's lead and solo on that piece.
I'm still blown away. I'm in agreement to your sentiments, Phil, because when I heard it, I was just like blown away, and the things that of course, it made me go back and study, but the things I heard you do, Chuck, it was unbelievable, and the chords, the progressions, just and as Phil was saying, the call and response style in which you guys took it and ran with. How difficult was it? Did you have to chart out everything, or when you
Chart out.
yeah chart it out? Yeah, I got to say that you
Man,
because you know what that is.
no, man, that the Holy Ghost gave me the chart. That was the Holy Ghost. You chart out, man. You are trying to do this from the muscle, man. Huh? We had to come from a spiritual, but coming back around, I I feel like everybody gave their own
Interpretation,
contribution to
contribution.
their contribution
Hmm.
because Darick Bennett and Carlton, actually, I think they've had some jazz training,
Right.
and Phil has had, I think he's had, or at least he knows a little bit
Okay.
because he used to be into that fusion stuff, man, and I couldn't get with it, but he was into it, and Darick Campbell,
Hmm.
he's so melodic.
Yeah.
that he ends up he always pulled me in because whereas I overplay, he seemed to put things in the right spot with the right tone. And so when you put it all together, even when we hear it, we're amazed too because it's really so it almost turns into a thing where the Lord came in and sanctioned what we were doing
Right.
and made it as good as it is because
Right.
we coming from our own knowledge. I don't see it.
Yeah. That speaks to the depth of the album. And again, for those of you all that have not downloaded to listen to it, you want to check it out. There's so much on it. Is so the bass solo, the drum solo. I know I'm
Yeah.
probably gonna have to do a definitely have to do another podcast with those two guys, with Darick and Carlton.
Yeah.
And my goodness, they went all in
Yeah,
on the bass solo and the drum solo. So
Yeah. No question.
yeah, and it speaks again. It speaks to the musicianship, and to be a musician, to be a multi instrumentalist myself, and to dive into a piece like this, a movement like this, you have to be dedicated and really, really get into that space of really wanting to be all in because that everything that you guys did on this was just phenomenal. So I went back and I started looking at your discography. Pass Me Not back in '97 with our Hooli. You have the Sacred Steel tour in 2001 that you all have done. Sacred Steel for the holidays in 2001. Can You Feel It in 2005? Beyond the Four Walls in 2013. And so much more. And then here we land in 2021 with the Love Supreme. I have to ask, out of all of these, what's your favorite?
Believe it or not, my well, it's hard to pick, but one you left out was Sacred Still Alive,
Sacred Still Alive, yes.
which the reason why that's so important because when we first did Pass Me Not and we started touring,
Hmm.
people were saying the Campbell Brothers music is so unique and all the things, the accolades that they associate with Sacred Steel.
Hmm.
And Chuck and I, we resolved, we said, no, this is not Campbell Brothers music.
Mm,
It's House of God music, of which we're part of the tradition.
right.
And so Sacred Steel Live was supposed to be a Campbell Brothers live album, but we asked our Hooli if we could include Calvin Cook, Ted Beard, and then Robert snuck in because he was there at the dedication.
Right.
But really, we wanted them to be on so that the world could understand where we came from and that we were a third generation in this tradition.
Right.
And then we were fortunate enough to be able to interview Willie Eason and have him come to our father's assembly and play.
Right.
And then we recorded that in that assembly. And so putting that album together, that was one of the most gratifying things because in that album we were basically able to pretty much present a history of Sacred Steel with Willie Eason
Right.
and then the second generation of Calvin and Ted, and then us, and then the next generation of Robert. That's what Sacred Steel Live ended up becoming. So that's why
Yeah.
that's such a monumental piece that one we were able to convince the record label to and allow us to include those greats on that album
Yeah.
and what it ended up becoming.
Yeah.
And I still like Sacred Steel on tour because it had those church tracks in it. Because four of those church tracks were actually on the same Sunday. So that service went like 2.5 hours and it was
Wow.
all blazing that whole
Wow.
entire day.
Wow.
And so that album was crazy too. So
Yeah.
that's why I love that album because it's almost all raw church.
Sure. I like that. Raw church. Raw Sacred Steel Church. What
Yeah.
about you, Chuck?
Well, my
What's your
favorites
favorite?
are I like those for all the reasons Phil declared.
Hmm.
Um, I really like them all because I'm always surprised that they come out as well as they do.
Right.
And because we really don't have a formula other than what we used in church.
Right.
And that was we try not to play too long, but you got to give enough, and you got to get into the spirit. But
Mm-hmm.
my favorites is "Pass Me Not" because I was just shocked at the way that came out,
Mm-hmm.
and also "Chosen Few."
Yeah.
And I think it's mainly because of all the people we've worked with
Yeah.
on those different. It's always it became more of a fellowship,
Yeah.
and you had different people helped us to be where we was, and a lot of them are gone now.
Yeah.
Charles Flannery and Ricky Fowler, and a lot of them. A lot of us have your father. Man,
who
Paps.
gave so much who gave so much commentary and contribution to the album.
Well, they also gave they gave us
Listen,
confidence. Ed gave a lot of confidence. He made us feel because he was telling us the different people he run into in Chicago and the different artists
Wow.
that he knew, and
Yeah.
he was like, "Hey man, y'all just as good as them, man. You just and I wish we would have took more of his advice, but it's and some of the church albums we worked on with the House of God,
Mm-hmm.
they ended up everything always turned out better than I had. Maybe I got low expectations, but they always turned out better.
No, this is great, and I know him and Anthony would be um, raveling
uh,
like crazy over this album.
look,
So
man, let me tell you something. And you remember I gave you that. I sent you a text, and I told you
yeah,
Anthony Harmon.
yeah,
He was out of all the players. He was the only guy. I always admired everybody's playing, and I appreciate it.
yeah.
He was the only guy I actually wanted to play.
Wow,
I wish I could play exactly like him.
wow,
I
wow.
mean, that's how great he was, man.
Yeah.
Everybody else, I said, hey, man, that's great. I love how you play. I appreciate it. You
Mm-hmm.
inspire me.
Mm-hmm.
I actually wanted. I was like, no, I'm actually jealous. I want your gift. I want to play like that. That's how great. That's how great that guy was, man.
Yeah,
I just admired him to death, man.
yeah.
Um, besides him being one of the crazier guys you ever want
He
to deal
was.
with, man. Oh man, he was nuts, man.
Anthony was a
He was
riot.
nuts. Yeah, but
Yeah,
no, he was again. Your family, man. It's
yeah,
just just some of the great musicians in this church, man.
yeah. I was. It was an honor. It was an honor to, when my mom was just here and she was with me and we were just talking and reminiscing and the Tommies. I listened to a lot of choir music growing up, so the Tommies. Yeah, you had Clay. We called him Clay but Clay Evans.
Yep.
Fell in Fellowship. In Chicago and Charles Hayes and all of that. That was my beginning. So as
And
a
Milton Brunson
Milton
and
Brunson,
yeah.
so we were listening to Milton Brunson, and that's what started the conversation. And we started listening to Keith Pringle, and
Yeah.
watching them direct, and everybody's looking at Ricky Dillard is like, nah, y'all need to go back and look at some of these directors from back in the day,
Right.
like Tyrone Block and Benny Cummings out of New York, and all these folks that paved the way for like your Ricky Dillards. But as a drummer, growing up, they would take me everywhere with them, and I was exposed to live recordings and doing all kind of session work, what we consider studio stuff. This was Saturday. We had a thing called Saturday Night Sings in Chicago, and it was literally a live recording every Saturday, and it would be
Mm.
televised every Saturday night. So Anthony would take me with him. Dad would have me there, and sometimes I get a chance to be with the other drummers and play and just do little things here and there. But it's those lessons that they taught me in the basement, in where nobody saw me develop, that really got me to where I am as a musician. And they were tough on me. They would teach me little things here and there, but they were very tough on the discipline aspect of musicianship. And I
Yep.
appreciate it now. And just going back, you know, even when we were talking about the chosen few, my dad he came home when he had he had the tapes, he had the cassette tapes, he had the unedited versions of all the songs, and he would just play. He said, now listen to this cut right here. You know, he said, now I told Chuck he need to re-record this and stick that there. And Phil wasn't doing anything on bass, so I had to come in with the four. I had to come in on the fourth string and show him what I was trying. And so he played it. So I would get this premise before he played the track. And when he played the tape, I was like, wow. And listening to Promulgate and listening to all those other hits, man, that's still, listen, I'm waiting for y'all to redo that.
You know, but the thing is though, Dante, first of all, Ed came just to essentially produce when it's all said and done, because he basically to give advisement about, as he said, what should go there, what was working, what wasn't.
Right.
And so now we say, hey man, why don't you play on the track? And he's like, me? Now this is what really knocked my socks off. So now he's shocked that we would ask him to play on the track.
Okay.
And I'm going, yeah, what, man? You're a bad boy. Why would you play?
Right.
And I think again, it's caught up in that whole aspect of this is the Campbell Brothers album, and of course we weren't the Campbell Brothers at that time. But the point is, this is you all's album, and the fact that y'all would ask me to play when I know you got bass players that can play.
Right.
But we were like, hey man, it'd be an honor if you joined us. And so and then he went and did his famous lick, you know, where he does the slide down, slide up, and then drop to the E. You know, so, you know, and no, man, that was it, man. I'm telling you,
you couldn't beat him on the choir, man.
Yeah.
You couldn't beat him on the choir. Did that choir stuff?
Nah.
Nope.
No.
That was his forte.
Yeah.
That was his forte.
He was pretty tough on that stuff, man.
Yeah.
Him and Lorenzo.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were pretty tough with that choir stuff, man. That Hawkins stuff. Oh my goodness.
That was their lane.
Yeah.
That was
no
their
question.
Lane. That was their lane. And he would tell you up and down. He had me matter of fact, you say Hawkins, one of the drummers that I admired growing up, and he introduced me to him, was Joel Smith, the late Joel Smith. That's who I mimicked my style after. Because Joe was like a walking, just a time machine. His timing was, and this is before, you know, we have all these click tracks. You know, Joe was.
Oh no, yeah.
Joe was just solid.
He was locking.
He was locked in.
Oh, big time.
He was locked in, and that was some of the stuff that they did. You know, when I moved here in Atlanta, and I started developing on keys, he said, "Okay." Anthony would tell me, "Yo, you know, get in contact with Kevin Bond." Okay. You know, I knew he was, but I was just like, you know, okay. I was surprised, like, okay, yeah, that's the one you want to listen to. I was like, okay, and every person that they pointed me to it was for a specific reason, and when I found those things out, it's like, man, I'm glad I met him. I'm glad.
Yeah, but you had in-house advantages too. You had Uncle Rodney, man, and all this stuff. I mean, man, look, let's face it, man. You talking about being born with a musical silver spoon.
Come on, man.
I mean, come on, man. You know, literally, it was all right there, handed to you on a silver platter.
No, man, I had to work for it, man. I had to work for it.
No, they made you work for it, but
sure
it was all still right there for the taking, bro.
That works.
Yeah, your family was like crazy, man.
Man, listen, and it was just it was like this when we got together, you know, and the people that I didn't know even when I was younger that would come to the house is like, wow, to know them now and to understand who they were, it's just unbelievable. Right. But yeah. But you guys were always talked about and still topic of conversations, even with me and my brother to my brothers to this day, Rico and Ed. So you already know, y'all know Rico hands on. So right. He is. Rico is.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. So
we'll leave that where it is, man. Okay.
No, when you catch Rico when he's on, you can't beat him.
You can't beat him.
Oh, you're dangerous. No, you're dangerous,
he's
man.
On, man.
He's a dangerous man.
You do some.
He goes into his world.
Man.
He does. He does. He goes into his world. So I'm gonna leave with this. I like to ask this question, and maybe it's just something to think about. But if you were to write a book, if you were to write a book, if you were to do, if somebody were to write or do some type of book or help you do a book, what would it be about? And what would you say? What would you have to say in that book?
You know, I think for me, it would definitely be um, evolution and enlightenment
Mm,
because there are things that we were taught as growing up spiritually and foundationally about how the world works and what spirituality is and what the church is and all those things.
hmm.
And they're true
Right.
to a large extent, but there are still things beyond that that we had to learn.
Yeah.
And some of it we had to learn the hard way,
Yeah.
and some of it you learn just from growing and maturing and experiencing life. Um, and and I still consider myself to be in that evolution and growth and maturing stage. But I think the thing that helps now is that I fully understand and expect that there will always be new levels, new heights, new more evolution and more enlightenment as we continue down this path.
Yeah.
That I didn't know, um, you know, years ago,
Right.
but now I fully expect it,
Hmm.
and I think that's the difference now, and why life is easier
Right.
now. But at that time, it was a lot of growth pain. It took a lot of growing pains to actually understand that the foundation that I given was given, which was very successful
Hmm.
and worked wonders, but it still was not the end all,
Right.
and that there was more to it than
Yeah.
that. That would
Wow.
be my book.
Wow. Wow. Chuck.
Well, my book would be more technical
Hmm.
about the sacred steel and pedal steel and knowledge that's been given to me that almost came through experience,
Right.
not from books. But then I was able to relate it when I found out what the books were talking about.
Yeah.
And the pedal steel and the way we play it,
Hmm.
the way we tune it, is very consistent over different keys
Yeah.
as to scales and also chord progressions.
Yeah.
And so I would like to leave that knowledge that I have gained in some kind of book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I would love to write the forward to that book because what Chuck actually did is he broke the code in such a way,
Yeah.
and I didn't even understand it at the time when he was laying it on me,
Yeah.
but he actually took the Nashville system essentially, applied it to the steel, and then applied it to sacred steel, and then created a tuning around it
Yes.
that enabled it right with minimal leg and pedal with pedal and knee lever pushes to actually implement it in a tuning and in practice,
Right.
and then ripped it in church after all of that,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And that's what was crazy when I came to understand what he was actually doing. I said, man, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And he actually simplified things for me because he had broken that code, and
Yeah.
then that's what opened up my world as far as what chord progressions were and how they fit and how they worked
Yeah.
because of what he did on the steel.
And I
Once
think
I understood it.
yeah, and that says a lot. And for those of you all that are listening, you understanding the Nashville system or the Nashville tuning that Phil was talking about. That's the E9 and C6 standard tunings that most steel players in Nashville used for their instrument for the steel guitar. And I say the same thing, Phil, because to take a tuning, to take either one of those tunings and incorporate it into one, and again with the use of pedals and knee levers, and even and I talked about this the last time I was with you guys, the way you innovated sound. You took where a lot of effects and a lot of things that weren't used, back in the day as much, as far as sound effects, and you innovated sound. Not only the tonality of it, but the approach to it. You didn't kill him, you didn't overdo it, but you gave it to him enough to understand that be creative. Come up with your own type of sound and style. But you guys innovated that. Y'all did that. You all did that for this generation, to the point where we really relish in that. I mean, I think, even with myself, I use the wah pedal. That's my thing, and I love the clean sound and all that. But the to be able to utilize that, I have to look to you guys. Like, y'all really came in and innovated that, and kudos. Because a lot of the young guys even today are still doing it because of you. Some of the guys using the same effects that you have. I mean, verbatim. Come on, to get that sound, because they were so wanting to emulate themselves after you all. So
They do a good job too, and
yeah,
the church has really given us a whole lot of innovation, different musicians, and I tell people it really never was a competition,
hmm,
but you definitely had a zeal
yeah,
to do your best,
yeah,
which ended up always taking us to a higher spot. And because you'd see a guy do something that you say, okay, I didn't know it could be done like that. That's nice.
yeah,
And you try to continue to be a part of the growth.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that says it all. That says it all. I have to ask before we go. I know Phil and Chuck. We talked about this the last time, and you showed me some of the results of those recordings from back when, I think we had the centennial celebration. I know we have a new leadership in place now. Are there any talks of ever releasing some of that music, the book, the DVD, or any of that material for the future?
No.
And there you have
Yeah, but I think, but by the way, and it needs to be said
it.
that
Hmm.
it was really, it was a beautiful thing to be able to come back home
Yeah,
uh, in the 2021 General Assembly. It
yeah,
was great to be back,
yeah.
to see as many people as we did, and it was really gratifying. And
And to kill the service.
you have to thank the chief overseer
Yeah,
and and his assistant, Elder Clary Butler, for
yeah.
reaching out, to say, hey, we want our our musicians to come back home,
Wow.
and they were gracious enough to invite us back, and just wanted to say thanks,
And,
because
and you guys sounded
it
amazing.
actually meant more than I thought it would. I think that's as simple. You go into it thinking, okay, I got to come down to play, and I'm giving something,
Hmm.
and I actually go as far as to say I received more than I gave,
Wow.
um, by being back. So it was that profound.
Yes.
What were you saying,
And
Chuck?
when I said no, it's just something I don't think we would open up,
Yeah,
to try to do.
yeah,
I mean, if they wanted to, it's there,
yeah.
but that's it's um,
But
we'll
Chuck,
see.
so let me ask you something. So Dante, just so I get it, just so I understand.
Hmm.
So, like, most people have not heard the Centennial recording or seen the DVD, or whatever. I mean,
No.
because I was under the impression that a number of that people had kind of seen it.
Not the
No.
centennial. They saw the millennium.
They saw the millennial, but
I mean, they heard
yeah,
the millennium. We did the
yeah,
CD,
yeah.
Right.
but
The
not the
the
centennial. You
centennial.
remember they took them and buried them.
Well, I know they kind of buried them, but I thought that it still got out, quote
No,
unquote,
no, no,
and I thought
Mm-mm,
it really.
mm-mm.
Wow, I
No,
didn't realize that.
no.
Okay.
No, and yeah, that says a lot about that. But no, it wasn't.
Hmm.
It
No
wasn't.
hard
No,
feelings on
that's
anybody's side, but you know, just
Yeah, this is
yeah.
business.
well. No, I think, but here's the thing. So you raise an interesting point that yeah, it's about time,
Hmm.
and the only reason I say that not because it's our work per se, but I think the church really accomplished something there,
Yeah,
and I think it's sad that they're not aware of what they accomplished.
yeah,
You know that the DVD and the documentary actually captures the event of what the church actually accomplished, and I think I like I said, I just thought people had it had leaked out or whatever that is. I don't know that people had seen it. And if they haven't, they've been deprived because the church really did do something, accomplish something that was very very significant.
yeah. I agree.
And so maybe I don't know. Maybe we need to reach out and say, hey, we have it. If the church is interested, here it is. Um, and you know, and just make it available because it truly is. It was truly some great work. I mean, the DVD won an award, won a Telly Award,
Wow,
just to give you some idea
wow.
of of how significant that is. And I think part of it, yes, that was the production, but part of it was because of the event that they captured
Yeah,
and documented. I think that was also a big part of why it won a Telly Award.
wow, wow.
So that just gives you an idea of this is what the church has, and apparently they're not aware of the treasure that
That they have,
they own.
that they own.
Yeah,
That speaks within
kind of like
itself.
they don't realize the great musicians that they have
Yeah,
and treasure them.
yeah.
I think this kind of falls in the same
That's
category.
not now. That's not true.
Well,
They love the musicians.
yeah.
Yeah.
But brother Chucky, love is what it does, not just what it says. What it
That's
does.
what it does.
Loose round
What it
here,
Loose
does,
around
they
here.
invited you to play.
huh?
Yeah, they invited you to play.
Oh, listen, like I said, I I say it again. I received more than I gave.
Yeah,
I think I think that says it all.
yeah,
Well, even
I'm very
before that, I've never been. I've never been to a place where they told me to get up from playing. If they invited me to play anytime I show up. So, you know, I think what you're feeling is like I said, you're feeling a organizational um, barrier than it is individuals.
yes, but let's understand individuals make up an organization. So an organization doesn't just exist as this entity, in and of itself. And what I mean by that is there are individuals, one, like I said, that are members of the organization, and then there are people who administer that organization. And there's steps that administrations can take to help people understand that they are appreciated and wanted.
right,
And maybe, okay, so I'll just say that's the challenge. And I agree there are individual churches that are limited in their resources as to how they can show appreciation. But that doesn't mean that you don't take steps to do that. And inviting you to play is very, that's well and good.
right.
But at the same time, you also know that hey, there should be some compensation around that.
Well, I think I'm going to push back and say that the nice thing about where we come from, I don't think nobody get appreciation.
You do realize what you're saying, right?
Well,
I
let me
mean,
put it this way:
this
we
is
all get
almost like
appreciated the
everybody. I
same.
mean, this is like everybody does it. So, right? I mean, seriously,
No, I
is that
mean
what we're going to
nobody,
devolve to?
nobody, really, nobody really gets paid in our from our church.
No, but once again, you misinterpret what I'm saying. You, I'll use the old church saying, Chuck, we can't pay you for what you've done. but at least we can give you a token
Of
of
our
our appreciation,
appreciation.
and that says it all.
Yeah.
Well, who else
And it's
got a token? Who else got a token in the church but the musicians?
what as far as getting a token.
Yeah, a
No, I
token.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Chuck, again, if we see, here's where this thing gets sticky. What people want to do, you want to come and walk into the church, get into the pulpit, and say the church must now evolve to this standard,
Right.
right? These new standards. We have to be better. We're streaming now. Therefore, we have to have production when we do. We have to have walkthroughs when we do because we're streaming now. We're putting forth an image, right? And then you say, but then you don't say, but we also need to evolve our compensation for these people who are doing all this work.
I
So,
think I
and
think
I,
you
and
have.
don't misunderstand me. I think there are steps. There's evolution.
Yeah,
It
and I
has
don't think you're
that has
giving
to
this
take place.
administration
So I'm
enough
not
time.
I'm not going to be totally unfair about it, but
Hmm.
I'm
I
just
think you're
saying,
being
hey,
unfair.
huh?
I think you're being
Okay,
unfair.
all right.
I think you're a little premature on your judgment. Give it
I'm,
some time because I think I've seen them try to do some things that haven't been done in the past.
well, first of all, I'm not judging anything. I'm experiencing it and living it. It
Yeah.
doesn't take judgment to know what I'm
This
living
is
and
true.
experience.
This is
That's
different.
like somebody say, "Don't judge me." I ain't judging you. I can see you.
Right.
That's not judgment. You taking something you shouldn't be taking. No, ain't no
Hmm.
judging you.
Yeah.
So my
It
point,
all
the
depends
point
on if
being,
you're taking it out of context.
no, no, no. No. I think what I'm actually doing is issuing more of a challenge than an indictment. Just understand
Okay, well, I think you
that.
ought to, I think we ought to leave them challenges alone.
Okay. Well, let's keep it at a love supreme. Let's operate at a higher level. I'm good with
A
that.
love supreme.
And
A
I
love
like that. I like that. Let's leave it at a low supreme. No, I think this
supreme.
is good because it all in all, it makes us do self evaluation and self check, even from an
Yeah.
organizational standpoint. We need to check where we are, and are we really operating at a love supreme? Even as a church organization, that's
Well,
important.
again, if you remember, I said my book would be evolvement and enlightenment, right?
Yeah,
Meaning, hey, I'm holding myself to the same standard.
yeah,
I have to get better too.
yeah.
So, don't feel bad, HOG. I'm working at it too.
Right.
And as I told somebody, even the churches that so-called pay or have salaries, it's only a few people on that salary line.
Yeah.
The other
Well, I'm
people have to
sorry.
come in.
Well, Chuck, the word is staff.
Okay.
It's only a few people on
Staff.
staff.
Yeah, I know you've been more places than I have. I understand. I got it. You and Dante would know about that kind of
Hey,
stuff.
well, it's what it is. It's what it is. But man, listen, I appreciate you guys, not only for your contribution to this last album, but your contribution to countless musicians, just people, leaders in general. If you all don't ever hear from anyone else, you're hearing it from me. I'm giving you your praises. I'm giving you your honor because you guys are more than deserving, and you are more than due. Not only for the things that you have laid as a foundation for our generation and beyond, but for just who you are. You know, behind the music, in front of the music, on the music, you guys exemplify that, and I appreciate it. So thank you for even doing this and coming on Dante's Harmony to have this dialogue and conversation. I appreciate it.
Keep up the good work.
I
Keep
will.
up the good work. Pray for us.
I will. I
Yeah.
will.
Thank you, Dante.
I
We
will.
appreciate
No,
it, man.
I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
all. I appreciate you all.
Yeah.